All right.
Should be live now. It's being recorded.
All right. So I'd like to call to order the Mass Transit Commission meeting. It is Wednesday, April 14th, 2021 at 6:01. We have our roll. Absent is just Andrew. And then item number 3 on the agenda is appearances, and it's Shri. Do you say Kaluri?
Yes, thank you. Molly.
Owner of Mobile 22. And Christy, I don't know, or sorry, Alder Goforth, I don't know if you would like to do any sort of introduction and sort of welcome Shri officially to the meeting.
Yes, I'd love to. It's rare we get guests here, right? So nice
Yes,
to
indeed.
see you. Shri and I have gotten to know each other as we both work in the transportation equity space. And Shri is a transit innovator that's really kind of helping get Wisconsin kind of up to speed. And so he's got exciting things to talk about. He's committed to zero emissions and sustainability. And so I think those are all things we all share those passions as well. So I'm excited to have you, Shri, and you do your thing.
Thank you, Christy. Oh, I'm sorry, you are asking me to introduce?
Yeah,
Okay.
you tell
Yes.
us, teach us,
Well,
let us know.
thank you, Christy. I appreciate that. I'm a entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. For the last 20 years, I lived on the west side and built a healthcare technology company, which did democratize healthcare research and brought clinical research to all the cancer centers and medical institutions. About 3 years back, I got into emissions and got very concerned about climate change and what was happening, and realized transportation was the greatest contributor for greenhouse gases. So I started 2 related companies. One is Mobility Transformation Inc., which owns Zerology, which is bringing all electric fleet to Madison. And then we acquired Green Cab and Badger Cab to actually operate transportation. And we are partnering and looking at more acquisitions. That is on the operator side. The second part is technology, shared mobility technology. That is Mobile 22. So I'm the founder of both of these. I'm actively running Mobile 22 as the CEO. I have a president for Zerology and Green Cab, Sue Goldsworthy. She runs that. And I'm very, very interested in putting Madison on the map to how to tame transportation. I truly believe that transportation is the greatest equalizer. How do we help people to go to where they live, to where they need to work, where they need to go to for healthcare appointments, but keep putting downward pressure. And I think environmental consciousness and costs are not opposing factors. There is smarter way of putting it all together to make it sustainable, but economical and affordable and convenient for everybody. So I'm greatly committed for that, and I greatly appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be part of this and listening. We are certainly very interested in seeing what we could do with you folks to be it transit. And Christy knows that I was in front of a planning committee to put in car share program in one of the development buildings that is coming up in Monona. So we want to do car share, we want to do ride share, we want to do transit, we want to do bike share, every single thing in Madison. Monona is a great community, small and contained, and a lot more opportunities for innovation. And the last bit I want to close on with is that I'm highly collaborative. It's not like I heard the master plan and I'm telling people this is what you should do. It's always like, let's figure it out together. That is my approach. That's what I've done for the last 20 years. And I would like to bring the same collaborative spirit to any subsequent conversations, including this. Thank you, Christy. Appreciate it. Molly, back to you.
Thanks so much, Shri, for giving us the rundown. I know that one of the reasons, and I'm sorry, I had a dog emergency on my end, so I apologize. I had to step away for a second. I know that one of the reasons why Christy invited you here tonight is because of your, the shared technology with mobility and the route planning software that you have created, through your many endeavors. And so I'm wondering if you have any input about how we could apply that to our very small service here in Monona and what that might look like, or a model that we could follow. We've talked about creating our own route planning software. I don't think that will be something that's in our cards is as far as staffing and budget, but to have some input from you about what you think might be ways that we could improve our, our route planning technology and how we currently use it in our current transportation system here in Monona, that would be wonderful to hear from you.
Absolutely. So the best way to approach that is constant innovation, right? You need to understand the patterns of utilization. You have some level of ridership data, but you already have fixed route system where you can start monitoring. Almost you should have access to it real time on a daily basis, not once in a quarter as a static report, so that you can do data sciences to see what are the heat maps, where are the people coming in from, how many of them are recurring riders who are banking on this as a primary transit system versus who are ad hoc users of the system. But if you want to drive it to the other extreme, the nirvana is not fixed route system. The nirvana is demand response system. Ultimately, what you want to do is, if you want to provide convenience, if you want to drive down the cost, what you want to do is replace with smaller vehicles, whether it is 4-seaters or 7-seaters, and have a lot more of them so that everybody can get to where they need to go faster, cheaper, and reduce the cost to the system. Right? So that is the ultimate thing is demand response system. VIA has done it very effectively in UK and a lot of other countries. And even some cities like Chicago has adopted that. Virginia has adopted that. And the whole transit ecosystem is changing as we speak, because another thing, what you are experiencing right now is the COVID. People are very concerned about high density travel environment. So San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, everybody is encouraging alternate systems which are less dense so that people feel more comfortable, right? So this whole thing, the ecosystem is changing right in front of us. On top of it, the newer trend, what we're seeing, two new trends, what we're seeing. One is the adoption of electric vehicles. It is every day it is increasing. It is mind-boggling how much it has changed in the last 3 years. And today you see a lot more vehicles, a lot more commitment from organizations like GM and others to introduce a lot more models that will become more affordable. But the answer is not everybody switching their gas vehicle to electric vehicle. This is a phenomenal opportunity for us to rethink transportation and say, not everybody owning their own vehicle. What if we provide convenient transportation with transit, ride-share programs, and car-share programs? All of a sudden, less number of vehicles are on the street. Not only you can help environment, but you can help congestion on the streets. So traffic engineering, all this. And vehicles are becoming smarter every single day. Now, you know, a lot of research that is going on about vehicle to traffic signal communication, right? So accidents will be less. And ultimately you'll have autonomous vehicles, but we do not need to wait until we have autonomous vehicles. Even when the driver is driving, if he wants to turn left when a car is heading towards them and the car refuses to turn left, we save a lot of lives. You know what I mean? So there is amazing opportunity. The technology is evolving. And the last bit about your comment, what kind of dog do you have?
He's a puppy and he's a mix. I think he wants a walk, but get out of here.
So we have an Australian Terrier. We love him. So what I'm saying is the technology is evolving rapidly. The last bit about your comment about whether you should be developing software. As a technology entrepreneur, my advice is please don't. It is very expensive to develop software for one customer, right? I can tell you in the last 1.5 years, I invested $5 million in the technology. It is very hard for a single community to invest that kind of money. You're better off finding a suitable, good enough of a software. There are a lot of software providers, whether it is us or somebody else. There are a lot of options what you can look at, right? So from that perspective, there's amazing opportunity to innovate, but we do not know all the answers today. So one of the thoughts I want to share with you is whatever you're planning, leave yourself some flexibility to innovate. Don't do it another 5-year thing with fixed thing. Everything is cast in stone, but leave yourselves room to innovate so that every few months you can look at evolving patterns and see how you can modify the program, ask the bidders to be amenable to innovate along with you so that you can create a win-win for everybody, for the community, for the residents. I tend to call them citizens. By citizens, I mean residents in a community, right? And then the community, city itself, right? It needs to be economically feasible for you and finding the right partner to innovate along with. Those are my thoughts. I hope I answered your question or opportunity to respond to that, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think the point that really resonates with me is thinking about 5 years out when we think about how where we are today, compared to say 2 years ago. And so that I like the idea of that flexibility piece because of that, because we don't have control over, say, the cost of gasoline and what that could look like in 3 years, so
True, true.
having that flexibility does make sense.
On the other hand, electricity is more regulated, right? So it is more predictable. Electric charges, we know exactly what MGNE is charging. They cannot willy-nilly change their prices.
Public utility. Do you know, like, what, as far as electric vehicles, how are they, because I've heard a lot of controversy or discussion about some electric buses and not being very reliable. And do you have any information on that?
Sure, a lot has changed over the last decade. Right? Electric battery was the biggest component, and the battery, first of all, the battery prices fell down by 90% in the last 10 years.
Okay.
So there is so much of downward push. And also there is a lot of trying and experimentation and improvement. And then the sheer adoption, there are cars now which has traveled 600 miles. We have 600,000 miles.
Wow.
So we have electric vehicles, right? We have been operating since October of 2019. We have a lot of experience and data to show the maintenance is so trivial. So the downside of electric vehicles, at least a few years back, which is changing as we speak, is the upfront investment. So the cost of the electric vehicles was much higher, but operating costs, ongoing maintenance costs, reliability is phenomenal. The reason for that is, Christy, a typical ICE vehicle, internal combustion vehicle, has 20,000 moving parts. As opposed to an electric vehicle has 20.
Oh, wow.
Right? So all of a sudden, think about it, the complexity of the mechanical engineering is minimized so much. The points of failure are so few, right? Everything is software driven. Even battery efficiencies are driven by software enhancements. You can get more mileage. When we started, we bought all long range Teslas. We had about 320 miles. We still have a lot of vehicles with 320 miles range per day or per charge. And now it is going to 400, and now they're pushing the envelope. Some of them are getting to 500 and 600 miles. So that's how it becomes such an attractive thing for a fleet company, right? As opposed to individuals who you may be driving probably 12,000 miles in a year. As a fleet company, we drive 60,000 miles in a year. Every month, we are putting 5,000 to 7,000 miles on a vehicle. Since October, we did close to 3 million miles in EV vehicles, right? And we do, today Green Cab does, last month they did 17,500 rides. Wow. Just last month. Wow. Think about the amount of emissions we eliminated from the environment, right? So a lot of it has changed, and it is a continuous ecosystem. And the big thing is there is significant investment that is going into the technology, battery efficiencies, lighter vehicles. And so because of that, every single day, the car gets better, as opposed to an internal combustion vehicle, which will deteriorate every single day, right? And also bear in mind, the grid is getting more sustainable, right? The investments they're making in more carbon neutral solar and wind and other things, so that they're making the grid a lot more energy efficient. That means upstream efficiencies are building up, so that together, the combined effect of utilities and transportation creates a very sustainable ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And we are investing in solar as well. That's another thing, is solar has got a lot of potential locally. You do not need to even draw from the grid.
Yeah, we are. I mean, we're making baby steps in Monona with our green roof, bus shelter. But I think one of the important points that you bring up, and I'll allow the committee to, contribute questions if they have them for Sri while he is here tonight. But one of the things that you bring up, and I know that Alder Goforth has, recommended this as well, is to leave some of the items in our upcoming RFP open-ended, to allow for innovation. So I think that's something that we should think about as we go through it tonight and sort of get it prepared to be sent out. But, I'm most likely the transit committee in years past has explored things like, bike sharing and car sharing opportunities, but I think it's possible that we could have a contract with somebody who offers those services or who can assist us with those sorts of things in the future if we leave the opportunity open in our contract. So,
Sure.
But I think that that's a really good point to leave space for innovation and future expansion somehow, if we can, in the way that we word our RFP this time around.
At least reserve the right to be able to renegotiate terms. That way you have the flexibility. If you're able to, if you're interested, you'll be able to do that. So that the vendors will not say, never mind, let's talk after 5 years.
Any questions from the committee for Shri while he's here tonight?
So,
yes, Eddie, go for it.
Ready?
one, just to let you guys know, our solar panels got installed today. So yay, very exciting. So this is now a topic near and dear, definitely a topic near and dear. I wanted to ask the thing that I've been work from home from COVID for the past year. And the thing that has really surprised me about our roads and our transportation in our neighborhood is that there is so much delivery going on for food, for packages, for mail, etc. And I guess it's a little outside the scope of this committee, but I wanted to just ask, being kind of a transit futurologist, to ask what can we do to incorporate these two understandings of the transportation within our community. It's getting people around our community, but it's also getting stuff in.
Yep, absolutely. And also with that, a lot of congestion, right? You got a lot more vehicles, and Amazon trucks are blocking one of the roads because they're kind of parking there and delivering packages. So they created more congestion as well. The good thing is, you might have seen Amazon has already committed to introduce a lot of electric vehicles from their side. They partnered with Rivian. They're going to completely redo their fleet, and they're bringing in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles in the coming years. But the best use case, after this, I will look for that article and I'll share that with you. A few years back, Harvard did a beautiful study in India about logistics of the last mile, first mile problem. So it's a case study, though unfortunately it is run by mafia, but it works very effectively. What it does is you get goods to hubs and spoke model. So you get into the local, instead of going and stopping by every house, you have distribution points where the vehicle is dropping off all the packages, and then you combine that with cargo e-bikes. Right? So you can create opportunities, employment opportunities for local entrepreneurs to make a little bit of a living, and saying that here's a truck, you just stop at just like your transit system is stopping at street corners, let the Amazon trucks or the delivery trucks do the same. You drop off the packages that are meant for that neighborhood in one location. There are local entrepreneurs who got cargo e-bikes. Ceres is introduced a lot of cargo e-bikes, and Madison City is piloting with 20 different e-bikes right now as we speak. So there is an opportunity to kind of multimodality. That is the way to solve this problem, is multiple providers, multimodality, providing more revenue for local employees, local entrepreneurs to make money and serve the local communities. There you actually know, just like you know the mailman, you know your delivery man. You know what I mean?
I was going to mention
Those are my thoughts.
Madison has 2 FedEx cargo bikes that they're piloting right now. So I just saw those somewhere the other day. And so, yeah, very cool.
Though unfortunately it is seasonal, but still it is worthwhile for those sunny days.
Not in Madison. People do bikes all the time.
Doug, please.
Bree, what's your opinion on Madison Metro Transit and how it functions, and is it a quality system? Is it not?
So, okay, I need to phrase this to be.
You don't have to worry about us. We're not going to tell anybody.
Except for we're going to record it and
This
post it
meeting
on the
is being
internet.
recorded. Yes, correct.
Oh, okay.
So what I would say is just drop all the philosophical debates of environmental consciousness and everything, and just bring it back to basic unit level economics. If you look at the unit level economics, the amount of money we spend on transit and the number of rides we provide, just do a simple math of total investment that is going in a year into supporting the metro and divide it by the number of rides. I guarantee you per ride cost is coming anywhere from $24 to $30 per ride. For most of those rides, if you were to take a cab, green cab, to be environmentally conscious, you may be able to do it for $9. So unit level economics do not add up. The problem with the systems are, once again, they are legacy engineered, meaning the routes are already fixed based on some population demographics, what we had at the time the contracts were drawn. Influx, Madison population, you've seen how much it has grown. So the route system, fixed route system is no longer making so much of sense. The second thing, every few years, Madison Metro evaluates, is there an opportunity to bring in smaller buses? Every time they say, there's too much of maintenance hassle not to standardize. So they go with 35 foot. Even worse, now we're talking about articulated buses where we got 2 buses going on. And if you look at it, many of them travel very empty until they come into the city center, then they're overpacked. So there is much smarter way to rethink the transportation. Doing the same thing, as Einstein said, right? Repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a better outcome is insanity, right? So there is a great opportunity. My personal view is metro systems should be organizers and orchestrators of mobility, not operators of mobility. There are a lot of future is owned by utility companies and fleet companies, which are innovative, which will provide competitive pricing and work with the system. There, you can put downward pressure on the total spend, but still get more convenience and more transportation for more people. So right now the system is broken. That is my thought. And openly I shared with the mayor and deputy mayor, and I'd love to share with the Madison Metro if they want to listen.
So the other thing I think about is, this is going to be a little bit of a long comment / maybe
Please.
question.
Go ahead.
Free association. Our transit system in Monona operates in its own little bubble. We could be in the middle of nowhere. It wouldn't matter. We're not connected to the network of transit around us. We don't connect to other regional transit options like Badger Bus or the Dane County Airport or Madison Metro necessarily. I mean, in essence, we connect with Madison Metro. You could get off and get on that bus.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not networked with them in any particular way. Transportation efficiency is bad because in post-World War II era, we all had a motor car. We decided to design the city around the car. Mm-hmm. Instead of efficient ways of moving people, we went for convenience and independence. So how do you reconcile poor urban planning choices that have kind of created bad transit for people with, I mean, you've been talking a little bit about being flexible and innovative constantly. So is part of your philosophy also geared towards promoting better urban planning strategies? I don't know. What are the things a community like Monona can do to start stepping in the right direction?
Your observation is spot on, right? There used to be a time we believe freedom is having a car and a gallon of gas in your trunk, right? So we are far away from that. So to your point, the infrastructure is laid out. So we got roads which have got multiple lanes, urban planning suffers. However, if you think about the moment you reduce the congestion and the number of vehicles on the street by having shared vehicles or more people in a vehicle at any given point of time, all of a sudden, the density will decrease. So that means people can get there faster wherever they need to go. Second thing is some lanes will open up. So those are the lanes what you can dedicate for passenger pickup and drop-offs. So that is not really a travel lane. Similarly, we talked about the BRT concept and something like that, and saying that just like you got HOV lanes on freeways, you can do HOV lanes on major streets, which have got multiple lanes, and saying one of them is reserved for public transit, whether it is managed by private fleets or public metro. Basically, you got preferential treatment for the traffic lights and go forward so that you're cutting down the time. There is an opportunity to leverage on the infrastructure we already invested in, right? And the second part, what you're talking about is lack of integration between different opportunities, modes of transportation. That's where the first mile, last mile problem comes into play. You're spot on. One of the things I was kind of sharing as a concept with the mayor's office is extending the reach of the metro. We got 4 transfer points. What if we are able to bring in people from Mount Oreb and some Stout and from some other places to the transfer points, and then have express lanes going from transfer point to transfer point. That way, it doesn't take 1.5 hours to go from south to the north. You can cut down the time by half. So think about the savings of frustration and the time that people get. And also, if you're not driving and if you're sitting, you can use that time to be more productive, whether you're relaxing, listening to music, or addressing emails, or whatever you do, right? Or reading a book. So that people show up at work with less road rage and be more productive, right? Less number of accidents and all those things. And as you see the technology evolution, the less number of cars and vehicle to vehicle communication, vehicle to infrastructure communication will reduce accidents. And right. So, and of course, cities can make more money. One of the concerns that have been thrown in my face is, oh, we get gas tax. We get, people are paying, all these vehicles are paying taxes. If you reduce the number of vehicles, how will we get the money for the road maintenance and traffic engineering? Levy a fee, per mile fee. Come up with a concept of saying that I'll add on a small fee for the transit and whatever mode it is per mile. So that way you're putting the money back into the infrastructure, maintaining the streets, redesigning pickup points and drop-off points. There's a lot of opportunity. And the last bit is that if we have shared mobility, a lot of parking spaces in densely packed areas will become redundant. We can convert them into parks and pickup points and drop-off points. There's a lot of opportunity to just dig up all the concrete, right? And convert it into green spaces and solar panels. There's a lot of opportunity to urbanize for the 22nd century.
Okay, one more thing. I'm sorry, everybody else. I can't wait. So here's my fear about ride sharing versus what we currently have now, or on-demand service. And I can tell you, based on our budget and our ridership, that we are actually paying about $13 per ride, which sounds pretty efficient based on what you told us. And that's about the cost to take an Uber downtown from here. It's about $15 as of today. But our transit system, though the we do about 19,000 rides in our best year, 2019. My estimate is that we're giving rides to about 100 Monona citizens, maybe 200 at best. If you make a transit system that's really easy to use and I can call a ride on my app, on my phone app, now we're paying a price per ride rather than a fixed fee. And having been successful in getting more people to use it, we've now completely increased our cost, astronomically, possibly, if like, let's say 4,000 of our citizens started using the system. So
how do you contain that?
Done. I don't know. How do you manage that?
Those are the things that you need to discuss and create a model which will scale properly, right? So absolutely, but fixed route system is not always the answer, right? So you can create unit level economics and talk about shared investments. So if you look at the operating cost, there is a procurement cost, there is an operating cost, and there is a driver earnings. Those are things that are all the factors what we include in, right? So you can figure out how to increase the density. So mixed vehicle types is an answer for that. So I'm in conversations with Epic. We're exploring how to, because Epic employees are worried about metro is what they have been relying on, and Epic greatly subsidizes the metro, right? So I had a discussion just last week with the chief administrative officer there, and they're looking at what innovative models we can create. And we are talking about car share programs, ride share programs. And then I said, okay, what about shuttles? All of a sudden, if I have enough commitment from, let's say, downtown, there is a Galaxy and a Constellation. And between them, if I can pick up 20 people, instead of putting 6 cars, I would put 1 shuttle bus. All of a sudden, per unit price came down. So the answer is mixed fleet size. So there's some cases where there is a 4-person car is better utilized. There are times where you need 7 people. There are times you need 15. Then there are times you need 25-seater. So the trick is being able to innovate and combine, bringing in multi-provider ecosystem, multi-modalities To play all of it in integrated technology, the thing what you're talking about, you need to have unifying technology where I can book, I can pay, I can track where the vehicle is, I know when it is late, I can make reservations, and all those things need to be brought together. That's the reason I created Mobile 22 is it is almost like the thought process is it's like a power grid, which is interconnecting the riders, the businesses, and the transportation providers into one single ecosystem so that you got 100% transport visibility. And now imagine the data that comes back to the cities to do more urban planning and traffic engineering. Right? So that is the answer is, there is no single model works. It is constantly innovating, fail fast, see what is working and keep innovating. That's the reason I was suggesting leaving yourself some flexibility to be able to address as the data presents itself. If you are looking at the data that every week, every day, the answers come faster to you than once in quarter, right? You can easily see changing patterns and can redesign the programs. Molly, I'm sorry, I can talk.
No problem. This is extremely helpful. And I think, Doug raises a really good point, and you have a very good, remedy for that, which is, for example, maybe we upgrade to 2 Lyft buses or 2 on-demand, services or something in the future, and slowly build from that point, just expand our current offerings with different size vehicles or different options for,
Exactly, right? You can keep it as close to as what you have today, while leaving yourself some flexibility. And if you can include sustainability into it, then you can monitor as things change. You can keep innovating and saying that, do you expand the hours? So Doug, to your point, the revenue hours, right? If the ridership is increasing, is the answer to kind of expand the revenue hours and provide more flexibility on that side, then your fixed costs are not going up and your per unit is coming down. Like that, a lot of innovative opportunities are there, but I do not know the answers. Molly, I have a lot of thoughts, but that's why I talk about collaboration, right? It's not like anybody got figured out how exactly to it. That's why I'm experimenting with Madison to develop a blueprint for the US, if not the world, to see how we can take a community or a greater Madison area and come figure out all these answers, working with utilities, working with the metros, working with the councils, and create a solution that can easily be published, research, data proves that it is working, what works and what doesn't, then broader adoption and scalability across the country.
Great. Unless anyone else has additional questions, I think in the interest of time, we may move on to the next agenda item. But Shri, I'd like to offer that if you'd like to stay for the meeting. Oh, Alder Gopher has something to say, but do you want to go ahead, jump in?
So sorry, can I ask just one question that I've been curious about is, I continuously am hearing people who are now working from home who have decided to sell one of their cars. And a lot of this is happening in Monona. And so I'm curious, what is the impact that that's having on public transit? Is it increasing? Are people not using transit as much? They're just staying home more?
All of this, what you're saying, people are working more from home. However, they still have transportation needs to go to the groceries, go to the restaurant and what have you. That is where the combination of the transit system and car share programs in the community, if you're living in a multi-tenant building, ability to rent a car for 2 hours or 8 hours in a month. We did the math. Typically, they need about 8 hours in a month so that you can downscale from 2 cars to 1 car. That's what we're seeing. The combination is that. And of course, Madison being a beautiful bike city, bicycles is an option too, right? For people to kind of do that. So Molly, if you guys don't mind, I'd greatly appreciate the opportunity to just hang on and listen in to the conversation.
Yeah, I think it'd be useful going through the next agenda items, if we have any questions specific to the work that you've done that can kind of inform our process, as long as, Mark, that seems appropriate to you. I think that would be good to have, you as a resource on the call. This is just a quick aside before we move on to our minutes approval, but, I know, speaking of rideshare, there are things like there's a Tesla rideshare available in the Madison area. And I think stuff like that, obviously the budget may, again, be restrictive in that, but that would be an excellent way if we ever wanted to, purchase a vehicle for the city or something of that nature to use for the purpose of on-demand. We could perhaps potentially partner with a company in that way where we would be, using a sustainable and, responsible vehicle for the purpose, of I guess, Ubering our residents around. So just something, food for thought. James, go for it.
I happened to look up the cost per rider in 2019 in Madison Metro. It was $3.85.
No, that's what they may be charging, but if you look at the total millions they spent on it, I don't
There you
believe
go.
that is any.
Operational budget, $59,413,000. They gave a total of 12,856,000 rides. That's, if you do that math, it's about $4. It's still a lot, but I'm just saying that's the 2019 Madison Metro report, just so everybody has a number.
Well, I will take a look at James. Thank you very much for sharing that. When I looked at the Milwaukee numbers and here and another community, it came to $24. That's why I'm shocked. If
Yeah.
Madison is doing that, they're doing amazing.
Yeah, that's their 2019 report. I thought it was fairer than the 2020 report because all hell broke loose.
Yeah, I know. 2020 is like hell basket. Okay, I'll take a look. Thanks for that information, James.
Thanks, Jim. All right, so we will move on to the approval of minutes. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 10th, 2021?
I'll move.
Okay,
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Right, any discussion? I should have said that first. We good? Any errors or, okay. Awesome. So we will move on to unfinished business. We'll look at our ridership report, and Shri, for your reference, we do it monthly typically, which I think is, a better and more consistent metric. You were saying real time daily, that would be ideal, but we do it monthly versus quarterly,
That's
for
good.
example. So Mark, if you want to comment on that.
Yes, just to update March. Last year, March was the beginning of COVID. I sent a report out right before I came. I realized the summary. I didn't send that out. So if you check your email, there's a report that's kind of the summary. So the ridership for the Express is 154 for the month of March. It's down compared to February because the number of riders per day, but it seemed like it's kind of steady at like six or seven. The lift, it is up. It's basically where it was last year. Last year we were at 408 for the lift, and we're at 402. So it looks like that, that lift number is increasing. January was 299, 337, now 402. So the lift keeps on going up and up. So that service for the seniors is being used. That's all I have. I do want to correct that. I was thinking when Doug said about costs like $12, $13 per ride. So I looked what our tax levy is divided by the 19,000 from 2019 is almost 19,000. About $4 the cost
To the
per
city.
ride.
Yeah. Part of it's subsidized by the state grant, right?
Right. So if you take out this, not including the state grant stuff, so yours includes the state grant.
See, that's
minus
what
the tax levy.
when I looked at it, I thought you had 12,000 rides in 2019, close to 12,000 rides per year for Lyft as well as the Express. I did not see 19,000 number when I looked at the reports from before.
18,618 rides.
Wow. Okay. So the reports I saw, maybe I mistaken. Okay. Then, but if you cannot include that grant money, right? So if you look at all the things, if you look at the total, you might have spent 300,000 or 400,000 for that year, right?
It's just
I do
how you
not
want
know, right? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I'll go on,
If you
sorry.
If you add all the things that it actually costed you to deliver the service, irrespective of the source of funds, if you take even round it off to 20,000, if you spend 400,000 total, because the numbers are 300,000 plus you got operating gas and other kinds of things, and then you got hourly revenue. I do not know where your numbers are if you add all the costs. And I'm doing a back of the napkin calculation and say if you spent $400,000 and did 20,000 rides, that is $20 per ride, not 13, right?
Right.
So like that, we need to look at the total cost burden to the system.
We have that. We have our annual budget, which is like about $250,000. And it includes the revenue that we get from ticket sales or bus passes. 70,000 of it is taxpayer funds from the city, and a bunch of it is from the grants, but it roughly totals $250,000. So
So
It's
taking that into account and creating that. Yep.
Yeah.
Wherever it lands, that is the approach. Yep. Agree.
Any other comments on the ridership report? Otherwise, we'll move on to the RFP. Okay, let's move on. And then, I know that we've had the opportunity to submit our comments or corrections to Mark, but we can discuss tonight anything additional that we find or want to change. And I just, again, in the interest of time, I just want to make sure that we are, saving questions or dialogue for specific items to RFP moving forward, just so we don't get too off topic. And I mean that completely respectfully to the group, but I just want to make sure we can get through the RFP and the transit survey within the scope of time that we have this evening. So
The big changes were the $3 for base fuel cost. We did put $1,000 in for the liquid. Back to the base fuel cost, I did talk to Bill Cole. There's two ways you can look at it, because we talked last time if there should be a cap on there, if you want to put a cap on there. One, we can negotiate it when the attorneys send the agreement with them, or if we want to put something in the proposal, we could. So he said it could go either way, but we could put a cap in there if we wanted to.
Good. I'm
So-
glad that protects us from that topside risk if gas prices spike.
But he said he could do either way, whatever way we wanted it. He said probably, I don't know if it's easier. He didn't know if it was either one way or the other. So he just said he can do it either way. Same thing with liquidated damages. We asked about that. He followed up with that. When he said that's fine, put $1,000 in there. He didn't have a problem with that. So that was fine with him too.
does anyone have, typically we've done, Mark, correct, not the cap, but the price per gallon. Do you have a feeling about that, or does anyone have input about what would be, should we stick with what we've done, or, would it be more appropriate to do the cap or both? I guess I would recommend, based on our discussion of the last meeting, to change just the price per
I would
gallon.
agree with that.
Okay. All right. Go
I did
ahead.
change-
Mark.
I did change the wording. My computer went down, so I didn't have all the notes. And Doug and Andrew sent me the notes that were given that were part of the chat. So I did. If you look at page 10, I did change the training based on what Andrew had sent in the chat for that. And that included the customer service, mass gatherings, with protests. And that also changed the description. Also in the page 13, that was based on what Molly sent me for those changes. So those changes were made. And then we did add on page 15, a customer service. We said no more than 5 complaints. These are monthly standards. And then at the very end, page 16, Monroe Transit Commission is open to other ideas and just suggestions from bidders beyond what is laid out in the proposal. This was something Christie requested to put in there. So that's kind of the major changes. There was a lot of grammatical and punctuation stuff, but that was the majority of the big items.
Looks good to me.
And when I read it, I thought it captured everything we had talked about in detail at the last meeting.
Did we so it's page 19 of the packet or page 15 of the RFP under administration in the first paragraph. I thought we talked about the 20 posters. Were we gonna stick with that?
Oh, yeah, that's supposed to be, I forgot. That's supposed to be deleted. I thought I deleted it in here. So that's that first paragraph, the last sentence is, I have deleted before I sent out.
Okay.
That's a mistake. So,
Good catch. Thanks for that.
You bet.
Any other comments or changes that we want to ensure were incorporated?
Oh, I had one more real quick. It's I have it listed as page 20. So it's page 20 of the packet under marketing. it almost seemed like the last sentence conflicts with the second sentence. So the second sentence says the city of Monona may provide the graphic design service for the buses unless an alternative option is provided by the vendor. And then the last sentence says the city of Monona will provide any advertisement graphic design
Should
for
just
the
change
buses.
it. May, is that?
I was thinking maybe we strike that last sentence. Does that?
Okay.
That seems like the simplest fix. I would suggest, Andrew is such a, longstanding and active member of the committee. I think it would be wise to ensure that he doesn't have any additional changes or comments before we submit, Mark. So if you could just ask him, via email or however, just in case he has any catches or additional changes that he would like made, since he's not here tonight. Otherwise, I think we're looking for a motion to approve and
We'll send it out. I'm sorry. If you get a motion,
Malik.
then we'll send it out into the month.
Right.
And then we'll, at July 7th. So
Okay.
we'll get that out there.
Shri, comment from you.
Yep. Okay, just two comments. One is the KPIs. You're already thinking about performance metrics that need to be defined and the vendor need to satisfy. I saw that on-time performance and other kinds of things. The second thing is call center. When I saw some comments from your constituents, they're talking about lack of responsiveness from the call center and other things. That is another performance metric what you can put into expectation-wise. And the last bit, what I was going to say is, I saw comments about technology that they need to be able to easily get to vehicle location and being able to make reservations and that. But one thing that I did not see is technology for access to you folks. That may be another thing to think about is the data, what you're saying. Right now it says once in a quarter they need, or once in a month they can provide reports. But if they can give you access to real-time views like what we're talking about, aggregated view of the hotspots and where the thing is, the more real-time access you have for information and the ridership, the better you'll benefit. I would encourage you to consider adding that as also as, if not as a requirement, at least as a preferential thing. We prefer that you provide access to the aggregate stats and the ridership on a real-time basis or quasi-real-time, even if it is once in a day, rather than, right now I do not see any language which is talking about you having access to technology.
Mm-hmm.
So something to think about if you are interested in that.
Yeah, I think we did discuss the concept of the tracking system, and we are, I think one of the things we wanted to do was leave it open-ended for the opportunity for such things that you're mentioning as real-time aggregate data, et cetera. So I'd have to go back and look at that specific paragraph. I don't know if anyone knows off the top of their head where it is in the packet. But I think potentially we could include some stronger language about preference for, somebody with that ability. I think the worry with making it more specific, Shri, was just that we have such a limited response to RFPs of this nature for a community of our size that we don't want to exclude anyone based on their fears that they won't be able to accommodate, a request of that nature.
Good point. But you can share the desire that
Sure.
you would like to, you prefer to have that, but it's not a prerequisite.
Well, and maybe we could put, because it says, the potential of designing their own transit tracking system or route scheduling software. And maybe we could say, which may include, X, Y, and Z, real-time aggregate data, et cetera. And that sort of leaves it, as a suggestion of something that we would really enjoy, sampling for our community, but not something that is that we prefer or that we are demanding from contractors at this time. So I think that's a good point to include, and I'll re-examine that language. And then if anyone else, has a better wordsmithing of it they want to include, feel free to submit that as a suggestion.
I think related to that, we have in the past had things as preferences, like it would be nice to have this, and then they harden with the next RFP. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to introduce those concepts as preferences, but I agree, if we make it a requirement, we typically get 3 or 4, only 1 or maybe 2 of which are fiscally competitive. So we would do ourselves a disservice if we scared off potential providers.
Great points. And Shri, for your reference, one of the things that Jim is referencing is, we previously had, we would prefer bike racks, and now we say you got to have them. So we've sort of taken our time with these things to include features such as that and accommodations
That's
of that
correct.
nature. So I think maybe we can say, if anyone would like to make a motion, maybe we could word it such that, to include potential amendments to the tracking system requirements section of the RFP and, dependent upon any suggestions from commission member Petro.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that motion. Do you need me to word it myself or
I think we can just say that you were motioning,
Okay.
to accept those terms.
with those flexibilities in place? Great.
Yes, great. And then do we have a second for that?
I can second.
Awesome. Thank you, Addie. This is really exciting. I think we've made some really important changes to this document. And Shri, I appreciate your input as well tonight, because I think those will be important considerations to make. So
Do you need an official vote?
My pleasure.
I
Yes.
will. Any discussion before we take a vote? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. And Mark will be in touch ASAP with those comments then if we have any additional. And this will go out at the end of the month. And then Mark, you said you anticipate responses in July-ish?
July 7th is the date.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Awesome work, everyone. Thank you for your contributions. I gotta get back to the next section. The next item we're going to be discussing tonight is the rider survey, the transit survey. And one of the things I want to preface this with, I appreciated Alder Goforth's samplings of different surveys from elsewhere. One of the things I want to preface this with is that we've discussed in previous meetings about making this more about enticing new riders. So I think we have to leave some flexibility in there about, what might incentivize ridership for you, not like you ride transit, why do you ride it? What could we do better? More of like what would entice you to ride our transit system, or why don't you ride it? And sort of expand to a more, general public, broader audience. And we hope to submit this by April 19th so that it can be disseminated in the next e-newsletter distributed by the city.
If you don't make that deadline, if you don't agree tonight too, we can always be the next newsletter.
Sure.
So it's not. But I did send out today, I realized I had the 2011 transit survey we did. That was kind of more of a community-wide survey. So, you can kind of take a look at that. We worked with actually a consultant at the time, put some of that stuff together. Some of the routes, or some of the questions and the results. And from that 2011 survey is how we kind of changed our routes. There were some key things in that survey that determined how we wanted to set our routes up. That's how if you look at the survey, get a chance to look at it, there were some things where they would want to go. One was the hospitals, UW hospitals, that is now on our list. One of the big ones too also was there was a time commitment. How long do you want to ride the buses? And that was number 6 on the survey. I know we kind of looked at that a lot because that was one of the big things we looked at determining our routes when we did we set the new route. So there is a lot of questions there that we kind of looked. There was 14 of them. If you want to take a look at that. As far as getting it for newsletter, I know we mentioned 4 questions, but I assume we probably want more than 4 questions. So with that, but yeah, so we need them by the 19th to get into the survey. If that's what we chose to do for this.
Okay.
Very
I think short and sweet is good. 4 seems maybe a little bit limited. But I think we can do some important things like, I kind of pulled questions from the different surveys that we have distributed previously that we might want to keep for the general public, and things that might not be as applicable. But one of the things that I think would be a good way to kind of combine a lot of things is if we were to say something to the effect of, I would, choose Monona Transit if, and then a list of things like, or I'm looking for, these things in my transit service provider, such as, safety, cleanliness, accessibility, reliability, courteous drivers. That's something that people have expressed before that's really important to them about our current system. Consistent schedule, the route being inclusive of places that they want to go, and then fares, something about, do you think the fares are reasonable for you? So I think if we can make sort of a, like a multiple, select as many as would be applicable to incentivize, the ridership for you. And then we could have an option to expand on any of those things. So like if you choose safety, do you have any additional information you want to provide about this? Or if you choose cleanliness, what would satisfy you as far as our, our processes and procedures? The other thing that I would just make sure we do that I don't know if it has been done previously is collect, contact information and information about, gender, ability status, things of that nature. But make sure we state, a disclaimer that this is all confidential information that will only be reviewed, will not be disseminated to the public. And also, so we can contact maybe randomly a couple of people who take the survey and say, let's dig deeper with you. You are not a transit rider regularly. Why not? What are some things that you think as an individual in our community that might be beneficial to you? So those are just some more broad, like broadly speaking, some thoughts I had about how to gear this survey to be particularly useful to us and inclusive of a broader population in the community.
Is there value in, or do we understand how people are getting around Monona if they're not using the transportation? And is that of value? Because I think, there's certainly the question, at least on the example survey that Mark sent out from 2011, it's like, do you ride it? Why not? But we don't really ask, how often do you get around in our community? How do you get around in the community? Kind of, what do they do right now? Which is a question that we can learn from everyone in the community. And then I think maybe off of getting some understanding of how they already are getting around the community, and then building off of that for transit. Do we just have to ask about our bus services, or are we asking about, the possibility of bike shares? How many people do go to, like, we do when we finally get vaccinated, take a cab into town to go to a concert and to come back. So how much of it do we get to ask that broad question about how people in Monona get around, and how narrow, or does this have to be very narrowly construed about the bus?
I don't know, Alder Goforth, if you want to speak to this, but one of the surveys, maybe the AARP one, was like, if you don't drive, how do you get around now? And that was specifically geared towards seniors, which we have a lot of, but it did, bikes or, walking or taxis, etc. So I'll let you.
Yeah, I had that. I thought that was a great question, because we don't know that really, other than our assumptions, but yeah, if your car is not available, what mode of transportation will you use? And it was, walk, get a ride from a friend or family or neighbor, take public transportation, take a taxi, take a senior van, don't know, and other, as an open comment box. Sorry, my kids are loud, so I'm trying to. I just had a couple other questions though, quick, about like, will we only be disseminating this through the city's e-newsletter? Okay, and then that kind of answers my second question, which is this going to be a SurveyMonkey survey or a survey within Constant Contact? Because Constant Contact, which is our e-newsletter software, has survey options available. But if it's a SurveyMonkey embedded in the newsletter, then that gives us a lot more flexibility. We can post it on the website. The senior center could disseminate a link.
Well, and I don't know what's allowed by, officially through our communications, but I also thought like a Google form, that we created as a committee would be a really easy way to collect pretty concrete data and evaluate individual responses from people. I just use that somewhat in my teaching position with colleagues, but I think what would be really great is, website distribution as well, posting it on the website, Christy, but I think this is also something that we could distribute perhaps in the Herald, as part of an article about, we're seeking input from the community, and other outlets. I mean, if people have ideas, there are, Monona community, neighborhood sites on Facebook. I think those would always, all be good avenues for, more broadly reaching a greater variety of people.
You
Do
know,
we have an objective for the survey? Are we trying to change this transit system, improve it, change our budget, change our approach? I'm curious, like, do we have an underlying
Good question.
meaning for what we're getting
Yeah.
polling citizens for?
I guess I kind of interpret it as a way to increase ridership. And potentially, through that avenue, as we discussed earlier, as ridership increases, that means we would have to meet a higher need. And how would we do that? But that is not something that we've discussed explicitly. That was just sort of my personal interpretation. So if others have input about, what the objective should be and how we should gear the survey in that direction, I think that would be an important conversation to have.
Yeah, I think mine was also increasing ridership, discovering the barriers of why people aren't riding, possibly using it as an educational tool just to help people understand our transit system, because it is so unique and so different, because we kind of have this hybrid model of demand response and fixed route. I was thinking those things. And then, determining maybe as well how people move through the community and who in our community really wants to use the transit. And so that would lead to demographic information collection.
Just back up to the question was asked. The plan was just, I think we talked about last time, was just for the newsletter. So we want to do Survey Monkey and stuff like that. I think we did that last time through Jake's department. And we also we sent in the spring, and I don't know if a spring or fall newsletter, it gets sent to every resident. There was a detachable survey, and that was sent back. We had a prepaid posted envelope in there, or prepaid postage, and it was sent back to the city too. So there's different ways to do it.
That's an awesome idea.
That's how we did it in 2011. So there was that. As far as the other things that we can do, that's the Survey Monkeys and things like that, or use it, the city newsletter.
Yeah.
I can
think-
put on
Well,
a
no,
sandwich board and stand at the intersection of Broadway and Monona Drive and just go like, hey, stop in here and take your survey.
The one nice feature about doing the Survey Monkey is that it extrapolates all the data and provides all the graphs and charts and all that information, versus having like a Google form where we have to kind of sift through it and we can't really, we have to kind of manually come up with the themes and the information.
I think an electronic option, as well as a hard copy version, Mark, are really good ideas. So maybe we consider including the link to the survey in the newsletter. And then I think doing the summer Monona guide or whatever. I don't know exactly, I don't know if is it like winter, spring, summer, fall. I mean, whatever the
Yeah.
next edition would be a very useful tool as well.
That would be the next one coming out. We wouldn't have time to get in the current one coming out, so it'd be the next one should probably be 3 months later or so.
I mean, I don't think we necessarily need a deadline on this. I think, over the course of this summer, especially as things continue to pick up and into the fall, I think things are going to be changing pretty rapidly over the course of that time period with people's comfort levels, number of vaccinations administered in our state and city. So, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a closed window, but I would offer, if the committee has different feelings on that.
Specifically to push later into the fall for when we send it out.
Or to start now, by distributing it in the e-newsletter, but then, a second opportunity with the, the summer fall city guide, or putting, something in more official notices of that nature throughout the summer, an article in the Herald, for example, or distributing it through our own networks, just continuously collecting data. And, we can obviously timestamp that to see if things change as things change with our circumstances related to COVID. So.
Yeah, that was my thought, because I think as we're asking questions about kind of the immediate past and the immediate future, the greater things change with COVID, the bigger that gap is going to be. So, if you were to ask someone, say closer to the fall when we're sure the kids are going to be back full time in schools, very different answer. As we start to see the university open back up for staff, we're going to see very different answers.
Yeah, I would worry a little bit about the contextualizing the results. I guess I'm not a social scientist, but I also worry if we have a continual rollout over 6 months, are we going to be sampling several people multiple times? How much would, I'm going to forget what I did last week, and I'll see a survey and I'll take it. So would I be overly weighting the results? I'm not that kind of scientist, though. I'm a different kind.
Super easy to take care of when you're analyzing, Jim.
Okay.
So do we want to, make maybe by, what's today, the 14th? Maybe by Friday or something like that, we could all submit, sorry about that. We could all submit, 1 or 2 questions that we think would be significant or important for the survey. And then we could probably take a committee, email vote, which I've done in other boards. I don't know if it's appropriate for the city, so I'll make sure that that is okay.
I don't think we actually can.
We can, okay. Does that sound appropriate for people? Do you think you'll have time to submit something specific by Friday? I mean, what are people's timelines?
I guess,
I've
is
put
there a
together
rush?
questions already, so I'm ready to submit them.
Okay. Sorry, Mark, were you?
I didn't know if you were trying to figure out and wait, send them later. I would rather wait to May to make sure we have them all. Everybody kind of agrees, but if we can get them now, I think that's the way to go. I don't rush to get this out there either. I mean, if they're going to wait, kind of like Eddie was saying with the COVID comment or lightening up, do we want to rush it either? So,
personally, I think that, if we're replicating the 2011 example transit survey that I saw, if we're really just replicating that survey, I think we can potentially get that basically through and set up by the end of the week. But I'm concerned that we're asking a lot for us to this draft, circulate, review, hopefully finalize a survey by Friday. That seems not just ambitious to me, but unreasonable, to be honest. Is that kind of what we're talking about? Is let's throw together a survey real quick by Friday?
Well, we've been talking about it for some amount of time, and I think we've been given new examples. So I guess and they know what, I know what people say about assuming, but I just figured people may already have questions sort of in the docket ready to submit. However, if we think to wait till May is appropriate, we certainly can do that. And that gives us more time to create something a little bit more updated or individualized or specialized. But, if we want to just replicate what we have done previously, but I saw a need for some additional questions in that 2011 survey, I guess, personally. So I wouldn't want to just redistribute that.
Yeah.
So,
and from the results, there's some of those questions that weren't performing very well either that need to be changed.
Yeah. So I guess I am fine waiting till May. I know it's something that we want to get off the ground, but I also anticipate that maybe people aren't necessarily getting out there yet fully as far as, bikes, public transportation, et cetera. So I think we may have a little bit more of a time, less of a time crunch than we would typically in a normal year. So what are others' thoughts on that?
I guess I see there's no wrong time to survey the community about their preferences for transit or how they might use it. There's never a bad time to seek that input. The only deadline I can see for us would be a self-imposed one. But I think it's good for us to set ourselves a goal so we don't just keep pushing it off.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think it would be helpful for me, if we're saying that the 2011 survey is lacking, then I would really like us to explore what we want the survey to do. And if it's come up with a way to increase ridership, that's cool. I think that's a valiant goal. I think we should talk about what we think is the ridership maximum based on the service that we're buying or contracting in our RFP, because there is a maximum capacity to what we have. And I think we should set other goals for ourselves too that aren't necessarily about ridership, but maybe exploring the other avenues for moving Mononans around the region. So, you know, I think that some of that maybe is a little bit more of a philosophical discussion. And I think survey writing is an art form that's really actually quite challenging to slash a science. It's a combination, but challenging to write a survey in a way that brings back the results you really, really want and can use. So I agree. I guess it's not something that I was only agreeing to submit my questions because I had done them, but I don't know if they're the right questions. So
True.
I'm open to waiting.
So I think it sounds like there's some information that we need, which is the max capacity that we anticipate being able to accommodate. I don't know, Mark, if that's something that you think you could figure out or, you know, kind of project to us so we can.
I think the buses are, if I'm not wrong, 18 to 22 is what they hold.
18 seated, you can have a max of, I think, 22 because you can stand. And
We
so
got
for
4 loops morning, 4 loops afternoon. So that's
yeah, but we also have the on-demand
Lift,
transit
yeah.
in the middle of the day. So yeah, you
That's
could
tough.
quickly do the math and figure out you can have, you know, what is that, 72 in the morning and 72 in the afternoon on the Monona Express. That's your max. But those are never going to be reached because, you know, loop 1 in the morning is never 18 people. All right.
We need to start having people go to work earlier so we can increase ridership.
Oh, I already go to work too.
The ordinance.
Ridership increases by 1 next week because I start riding again on Thursday.
Hey, way to go. That's exciting.
Cool.
So
What prompted your decision, if I could ask, to get back on the bus?
10 days after my second shot. That's all. Yeah. So
Congratulations.
thanks.
so maybe we set a deadline of, you know, a week from now, we have submitted our questions and then we'll have time to distribute everything. And then by the May meeting, we can sort of firm things up based on what's been put together. Does that seem fair or a sufficient amount of time to get our initial suggestions into Mark?
And I think it seems very fair. I was going to say, since there probably will be a lot of overlapping questions and redundancy, maybe how about we leave it to, you know, people can submit up to 5 questions or something like that.
Good idea.
Just to see, yeah, so we have a larger pool of options.
Good idea. And I think it does seem like we want to keep it, you know, 5 to 10, you know, nothing too, just given people's limited attention spans and, you know, willingness to participate in most things these days.
Yeah.
I think to keep it short and sweet, but I do think, you know, there likely people will submit similar things. So I think up to 5 sounds like a good cap.
Yeah. And the 2011 was 14 questions. That seems, I think, fairly comfortable. Does that seem?
I think if we can try to do 10, but
Okay.
that's just a nice even number to me that is a little bit more manageable. But, you know, maybe we have 14 righteous questions that we want to distribute to people. So maybe we can be flexible about that and talk about ultimately what are essential and what are non-essential questions to include. Does that sound good?
Yeah. I was wondering what people thought about collecting some demographic data, as far as like age, ethnicity, disabilities, how many
We have
cars.
that for the, we do have that from,
How do we use that information?
I don't want to speak. I'll let you answer first, Christy, and then if I have anything to contribute, I
Yeah,
can.
I was just thinking of an equity and access perspective.
So I would say, for example, Doug, if people are unable to take transit because of accessibility issues and they list that they have a disability, I think we could say, you know, our accessibility in our current vehicles is inadequate in accommodating these people who are interested in riding transit, but are not able to based on, you know, wheelchair accommodations or things of that nature.
I would be a little bit cautious with that because it could also mean that they don't know because they are all wheelchair accessible.
Exactly correct. And I think, but that will provide us an opportunity to say, did you know that? You know, we can dig deeper collecting that contact information, that demographic information. I think there's also an idea of, you know, who we are reaching with our communication. And I think if we see, you know, the only people who, because previously we've collected addresses, right? So if we say the only people who responded are these people from this specific area of town, it may indicate that we're neglecting to communicate effectively with other, you know, demographics and regions of our city who may not have the same access or the same interest or knowledge about public transportation. So I guess I do think it's worthwhile to provide a more equitable. Sorry, go for it.
We won't be able to make that assumption either. If only white people respond to the survey, we won't be able to assume that it's anything that it, I mean, you could assume it's a failure in our communications, but you can't, but that's not proof that it is. And I have no problem with it. I'm just like, is it extra data that we can't use to transit that might deter people from even taking the survey?
I think you could also, you know, you could always put, I choose not to answer this question to provide an out, but I guess, and you know, I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm a big proponent of, you need to actively seek out, you know, underrepresented voices to make sure that we're including them. Even if it's an assumption, you know, based on everyone was white who responded or everyone was able-bodied who responded. We know there are people of color and people with disabilities in our community. And so I kind of feel like we have to be more actively seeking out voices that we're not hearing from in order to make sure that we're appropriately accommodating them. Maybe they just don't care. And that's an acceptable answer too, or they're not interested or they don't have a need for it, et cetera. But I think it's time to sort of actively make space or actively, you know, investigate those things. So
I did include it on the current writers. We did ask that question, age and race and gender.
thanks, Sri, so much for joining us tonight. We'll be in touch. Feel free to send any other information you might want to share with us.
Will do. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
So I'm open to go for it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I was
Abby.
going to say how I think about demographics as I'm putting together a survey. And I've done a lot of these, and is two things. We want to know, correct, Molly, is did we reach, you know, we have this ideal group of people that we're trying to reach with our survey, and that's everyone that lives in Monona. And we want to be able to say the people that we talk to in the survey are similar to the population that we tried to collect. So that's one reason. The other reason, and the reason, and my point is that we also have hypotheses about groups of people that will respond differently to different questions. So, you know, you're asking also is if someone is differently abled, are they able to access our transit? And so we expect that their responses will be different enough from everybody else that we want to ask them, be able to tease them out in the data, right? You know, I think, and so as we've been talking about what groups do we think will respond differently to the survey, some of the things that have come up that I wouldn't normally call demographics, but are kind of in this area would be things like how many cars in your household. Also, do you have kids in school? Do you commute to work? You know, what are their kind of baseline transportation needs? And also the kind of thorny question is, you know, we expect that we have social classes in our community and those social classes will respond differently. So how do we get at that question? So as I'm thinking about demographics, I don't think we need to do the whole like census panel of, you know, gender, education, age, sex, race, education, income, and I don't remember. There's like a set, right? I don't think we need to drill down that level, but we should be thinking what can serve both of our purposes. Does the survey respondents look like the community, and can we identify groups that we predict to respond very differently?
Eddie, thank you so much. That's a really, very well informed and very thoughtful and, easily accessible way to explain the goals here. You mentioned some things that were included in some of the surveys that Christy sent, number of cars in the household, ages of people in the household, school age children, things of that nature.
Yep.
I also think, one of the questions that was in one of the surveys was, is one of the impediments to you accessing transit distance to a bus stop? So there are certain areas of town, and we've talked about, putting a bus stop at on Winnequa Road near Healy Lane on the south side, I guess, south. So, we've hypothesized, like, would it make it easier for people, to bike to this bus stop or to get to this bus stop if we put it here to increase ridership? And so I think, demographic also includes different segments of town, regardless of, race, age, et cetera, that, maybe just the issue of accessibility as far as reaching a bus stop or knowing where to go is part of that demographic information too, that we would like to know. So anyway, I think Addie really speaks to the greater idea, which is representation in our sample. So.
And if I turn into Professor Addie again, guys, just tell me.
I'm into it. Don't you dare apologize, girlfriend.
I taught master's students for 4 years. So I'm like, oh God, so I haven't talked about this stuff in a long time.
I think that's great. I think it's very helpful to illuminate, the goals here. So, so we'll say let's say by Friday, the 23rd, I think, we will have up to 5 questions submitted to Mark. He will share, kind of parse through if there are any overlapping questions, make sure we eliminate those and distribute to the group so that we have time to kind of pick through, make any edits or suggestions we would like, and with the intent of approving at our next meeting, rather. Does that sound like a good plan moving forward to everybody? Okay, great. So I think, sorry, I got to get back up to the agenda. Do we have any reports from you, Mark, or what's the items for future discussion? And I have one, which I will items for the next meeting. One of the things that I think will be important to ask in the survey is access to online resources with regard to transit, like booking, fare tracking. We've talked about, or not fare tracking, route tracking, bus tracking information, things of that nature. How can we move some of this information, purchasing passes, and visualizing the routes, connecting with the Lyft? How can we make more of that technology accessible online for riders? So I would just like to discuss that potentially at the next meeting to see how we can broaden our access online for transit. And then any other potential items for discussion? Nope. Alder, go forth. Anything else from you?
No.
Okay. Mark, any other reports or anything from your end that you want to share?
No, I believe, one just quick thing, the riders have been vaccinated, I was told, so they've got at least got their shots, so.
Great.
Good.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And I think that also just makes other people, potential riders, et cetera, feel comfortable just knowing that we're getting there with our, service providers and frontline people. In this case, I will thank you all. I know it was longer than usual meeting tonight, but I think I'll say it again, every meeting, very robust and important discussion. So I appreciate all of you participating tonight. And thank you, Christy, for inviting Shri. I think that was good to have some outside perspective from someone with his background and experience. So
I agree. It was awesome.
It was kind of like a mini webinar. Mini
there you
transit webinar. It was kind of good.
so I will entertain a motion to adjourn in that case.
I'll move to adjourn.
Great. Do we have a second?
Yep, second it.
All in favor, and then we'll see you next month on the 12th. See you next month, May 12th.
Cool.
Okay.
See everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Everybody.